we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case.
Police have a man in custody on firearms charges that has been identified as a person of interest in the brazen murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He was reportedly spotted in a McDonald's, a whole state away in Pennsylvania, and now officials say the man had several pieces of key evidence on him when they arrested him, and that could all tie back to the murder on the streets of Manhattan. We've got the latest details. Plus, I sat down with former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder to talk about all the latest developments, as well as the rage that's been simmering around the country over healthcare coverage. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so at the time of this recording, a man in Altoona, Pennsylvania, is being called a, quote, strong person of interest in the shooting death of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson from last Wednesday. A person apparently spotted this man, identified as 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, at a McDonald's and then called in a tip. Now, NYPD's police commissioner said during a news conference Monday afternoon that Mangione had a gun and apparently a silencer on him. These are the weapons that seem to be consistent with what was on the shooter, plus a New Jersey ID that apparently matched the one that the suspect had used to check into a New York City hostel several days ago. And that's where he was caught on surveillance, pulling down his mask and exposing most of his face. A worker at the front desk of the hostel says that she was flirting with the man. That's why he pulled down the mask. And police have previously said that the photo could be instrumental in catching their suspect. And based on this tip, based on this reporting, maybe that's what happened. Now, a source told the New York Times that the man also had a handwritten manifesto that apparently criticized healthcare and insurance companies. Here's what NYPD leadership had to say at a news conference Monday afternoon.
Preliminarily, like I said, he seems that he has some ill will toward corporate America, but that will all come out as part of our investigation. We're not done here. We're still going to be putting this together. We're still going to be working very hard to bring this to a successful conclusion. He was in possession of a ghost gun that had the capability of firing a 9mm round and a suppressor.
Certain aspects of this investigation and the crime itself is something that we have been zeroing in on. Ghost guns. We have really talked about this since the beginning of the administration. They could be made on a 3D printer, and they are extremely dangerous, and we must do more on the federal level to clamp down on the availability of ghost guns. One thing is clear, that, thank God, this person didn't go out and harm other individuals. The longer he stayed on the streets, the more dangerous it could have been.
Now, before this major development, I actually had a chance to sit down with former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder. We went over some of the different pieces of evidence in this investigation. Let's hear what she had to say. Tracy, thanks so much for coming on. I imagine you have had quite a busy week. What is your reaction to the investigation so far, since we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jesse. My reaction is they're doing a good job. I think part of the issue is the public expectation, right, is that law enforcement is omniscient, right? That there are hundreds of thousands of us combing through all of that digital video evidence, phone evidence, all of that, and we can get it turned around really, really quickly. It doesn't necessarily work like that. It takes time to go through all of this. Also, in terms of facial recognition, if this is a suspect that has never been arrested before in New York, or even DNA analysis has never been arrested before in New York, it's not going to show up. They don't have access to DMV databases all over the United States. It's actually a violation of people's privacy. And so I think people maybe have this misconception that law enforcement has anything and everything and all the things available to them, and they don't, but they're doing an excellent job. And one of the things I stressed about this earlier on is it's actually more important sometimes to work backwards. Where did his journey start? And starting from there, then you can start to find those details in terms of where he's going. So sometimes it's more important to work back than continuously chasing the subject.
Hey, by the way, we really, really appreciate you guys coming to us as we continue to follow and break down the developments in the CEO shooting story. And again, thank you for your trust. And for that, I also have to call out our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, because with their support, it helps us to keep on doing this. Now, look, here's the deal. If you're injured, you got to know what your legal rights are and if you can be compensated. And Morgan has a dedicated team of over 1,000 attorneys. They have case specialists, paralegals, investigators. They have an incredible track record, by the way, like recent verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia. These are higher than the highest insurance offers in these cases. There's no upfront fee. The whole process can be done right from your smartphone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. And then we're going to get into some new details about this, including the backpack in a second. But since I haven't had a chance to talk to you, I've been raising this question to everybody I've spoken to. Do you find it weird that out of all times to kill Brian Thompson, you do it in New York City at 6 something in the morning when it's like the hustle and bustle of the city? There's hotels everywhere. There's office buildings everywhere. You fire a weapon at him, point blank range. There's an eyewitness there, or seems to be an eyewitness there. And you're able to escape too, which I think is just, I'm shocked by that, but two separate issues there. I guess the question is, when we wonder who might have done this and whether they had any training, whether they were a hired assassin of some kind, and we'll get into what police say about who the person might be. Do you find that attack very strange? If you want to kill somebody, to do it this way in such a wide open urban environment, do you not find that a little strange?
I mean, I'll just be completely blunt and honest with you. First of all, I don't think that this is a trained assassin. I think the second thing is I actually don't find it strange. I think this is the perfect cover, quite frankly, to use. Mr. Thompson is from, a suburban-ish city outside of Minneapolis, I believe. In a place like that, this individual would have absolutely gone noticed. And in my opinion, wouldn't have been able to blend in. In a place like New York City, as you mentioned, with the hustle and the bustle and so many ways to exit, there are so many ways to exit New York City. There's bridges, there's buses, there's airports that are very, very close by. I'm actually not surprised that this is the avenue that this individual took. I may have a lot of people that disagree with me. Obviously, this is very, very brazen, but at the same time, this is a very densely populated area. And as a result, sometimes when something happens like this, it can actually be confusing. There could be many people around that might be seen as suspects. And I think this individual actually counted on that.
That's a good point. Okay, that makes sense. Well, let's talk about the backpack. So one of the biggest developments so far is that police have found the backpack in Central Park. Last time we reported on this, they were looking for it. They couldn't find it. Now, officers, they could be seen combing this park on Friday, looking for both the backpack and the handgun that the shooter used, because in video from the scene of the crime, it appears the gun had a silencer on it. So when they finally find the backpack, according to sources who spoke to ABC News, it only had two things inside: a Tommy Hilfiger jacket and Monopoly money. Yeah, I bet you didn't think that one, because that was a shocker to me. Now, the NYPD, to be clear, has not publicly confirmed that, but speaking with reporters over the weekend, Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny revealed that the suspect might have been using a veterinary gun. So this is a larger gun that's used on farms and ranches when an animal has to be put down. So it's designed to not make a lot of noise or a loud noise. And NYPD officers are still searching for that gun in and around Central Park, even apparently sending divers into the freezing water. Tracy, a lot of questions I have here. What do you make of the developments regarding the book bag and the gun? Let's start there.
So again, I sound so blunt, but maybe it's the FBI in me. I try to be as logical as possible, probably too logical. In my opinion, this was the first thing I said when I went on air to discuss this, that suspect was going to ditch that backpack ASAP. There was going to be no evidentiary value in that backpack, because the reality is it was so telltale, right? The color, the type of backpack, all of that really was something that you could use to identify this individual. So I felt that his first order of business was going to be ditching it. And as a result, there wouldn't be anything of any value to investigators within that backpack. And it turns out, based on your sources, that there may actually not have been. But again, we don't know for certain. So I'm actually not surprised that it was found, and I'm not surprised that he ditched it right away.
Can I start with, then why wear it in the first place?
So that's a really good question. Again, I have theories, Jesse. I have no information to back that up, but I have theories. Okay. This is a very well-planned, thought out attack, obviously. I think we can all agree on that. if you want me to be completely honest with you, I think part of it was to confuse investigators, that they would be looking for this individual with this backpack on. And that's why I said from the get-go, he's going to ditch that right away. And I do think part of it was for confusion, particularly, and again, we don't know for sure, particularly if there was monopoly money in it. I think he intended for it to be found, and I think he was goading investigators. But again, that's just my hypothesis.
You might be right. It's just bizarre, another bizarre detail. All right, and talk to me about the gun. What do you think about that?
Sure. It could absolutely be that veterinary gun. It could be a Station 6 as well, which is sort of a rare, newer model Glock that has that silencer built into it. It's obviously hard to say from that grainy footage. If they find it, obviously, that's a whole nother story. I think he would have, again, ditched it in water. That's another thing that I've said, because obviously it takes fingerprints off of it. And if you notice in the video of him committing this crime, he has no gloves on. So this is someone that was very, very much confident that he would be able to ditch that weapon and have no fingerprints left on it. So in terms of using that gun, again, this is a busy place. I'm not sure how many people would necessarily flinch at hearing a gunshot, but you would want to muffle that sound as much as possible. And if you see that the gun does jam several times, he may have been using subsonic ammunition, and that's lighter. And what it can do is it jams the slide, so you have to rack it manually. But based on what was found on the shell casings, he may have done that on purpose.
Is that easy to get, that kind of gun and ammunition?
Yes. I mean, depending on what state you're in, to be completely honest with you. And again, it looks, right, per evidence that we've seen, that he traveled via Greyhound bus. I think that may have been purposeful, obviously, to avoid weapons laws and things of that nature. Obviously, he's not going to hop on an airplane because that would be prohibitive in terms of bringing weapons with you. So it's hard to say.
Talk to me about the FBI. Now that the FBI has taken a role in this, other than just the reward they've put out, what resources does the FBI provide? Why are they a part of this? And does this mean that the investigation may take an accelerated position now that the FBI is a part of it?
So I think that was partially why they were brought in, to accelerate things. Look, NYPD, in my opinion, is the best of the best of citywide law enforcement. They truly are. But they only have so many people, right? And so many resources. And so I think the FBI was brought in the same way that they were brought in the Koberger case back in Idaho. And in my opinion, that was to really help comb through the sheer volume of evidence. They have ways that they can do it quicker. They have resources available to them to help them process it quicker. Also, I do think this investigation seems to transcend state lines, which, as you know, makes it now potentially a federal crime. And so I think those are the two reasons that they were brought in.
Let's talk about the other evidence in this case. So police say they found this water bottle and food wrappers in this alley near the scene, which they say are connected to a Starbucks on 6th Avenue where the suspect was spotted before the shooting. And the chief of detectives said that there was a fingerprint that was recovered from the bottle, but it was apparently smudged. Evidence was sent off for DNA testing. The results haven't come back yet. We'll see if anything does. But the chief of detectives also revealed that based on the evidence so far, they believe a possibility is that the gunman is either a disgruntled ex-employee of UnitedHealthcare or an angry client. And he said the NYPD believes that the shooter acted alone. Now, we know that at least 3 words were written on the bullet casings found at the scene: deny, defend, depose. Those words could be in reference to a 2010 book called Delay, Deny, Defend, why insurance companies don't pay claims and what you can do about it, written by a Rutgers professor. Investigators say they're looking into a possible connection. Tracy, now that they're saying that this could be someone more connected to Thompson, right? This idea of maybe not a hired assassin, but somebody who was a disgruntled employee, an angry client. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I think that's also why I don't believe that this is a trained assassin, if you will. If you look, he misses that very first shot from not very far away. He actually doesn't hit the center mass. He hits the calf, Mr. Thompson's calf. And so that tells me right there, I hate to sound cavalier about this, but as a trained law enforcement officer, it's not a difficult shot to take. It's not from far away. Also, it's interesting, I actually went to that exact Starbucks when I had come to see you back in New York City. And what's so interesting is that, in my opinion, a trained assassin would not be leaving DNA behind, right? In cups, wrappers, those kinds of things. Again, it's going to take a while to process that DNA My gut has always said that this may have been someone whose loved one or themselves was denied coverage for something catastrophic or for something terminal. I think that has been reinforced based on a lot of the chatter that I have seen online about this assassination. And so
Yeah.
part of me is more leaning towards that.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Of course.
Because what is a really distressing and unnerving reaction is what we're seeing, the general public after the shooting. I don't mean everybody, but you are seeing these large groups of people online who are just seemingly celebrating Thompson being killed, showing support for the gunman. There was even a shooter look-alike contest in New York over the weekend. And social media has been inundated with stories of people who were denied insurance coverage for medical procedures and treatments, experienced delays in getting that treatment. They were dissatisfied overall with UnitedHealthcare for one reason or another. And to be clear, look, UnitedHealthcare is one of the largest national health insurers. The New York Times reported that it made more than $280 billion last year. And Thompson's compensation was just over $10 million between his salary and his stock options. And in fact, according to KFF, a nonprofit health policy research group, the majority of insured Americans had at least one issue, including denial of claims with their health insurance in the span of a year. And UnitedHealthcare is facing a class action lawsuit that was filed last year in U.S. District Court in Minnesota, where UnitedHealthcare is based and Thompson lived. And the complaint states the putative class action arises from defendants' illegal deployment of artificial intelligence in place of real medical professionals to wrongfully deny elderly patients care owed to them under Medicare Advantage plans by overriding their treatment physicians' determinations as to medically necessary care based on an AI model the defendants know has a 90% error rate. So according to the lawsuit, a large majority of those denials are eventually reversed through an appeal to the company or in legal proceedings, but a denial can cause a delay in getting treatment for patients who need it. And according to a report from the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, which was released in October, UnitedHealthcare more than doubled the rate of denials for care following hospital stays between 2020 and 2022. Now, Tracy, I've said this before. I said it on air on a different program, but, you know, health insurance has ruined people's lives. But to show, you know, this level of support for the killer, Brian Thompson was a human being. He was a family man. And even if you assume or you say that he broke the rules or he committed a financial crime, whatever it might be, that doesn't warrant the death penalty. And the thing that I'm scared of more than anything is what will be the result if there are changes in healthcare policy, both on a corporate level or even a congressional level, and you're like, well, it took the murder of a CEO for that to happen. What a dangerous precedent that sets. But I'm curious your perspective too, because you know your whole career has been investigating crimes. To see this response must be a bit distressing.
It's, to be honest with you, extremely distressing. Look, I'm not usually personal on this show with you, but I will be for a second. Look, I've been denied healthcare before. I had $88,000 in debt at the age of 22 because I had my first back surgery at 21, couldn't walk. I had to have it. It was denied to me. And I had debt. I had to pay that off. I wasn't happy about it, of course. I don't think anyone is happy about it. I lost my ability to have children. My daughter is carried by a surrogate because I was denied a hysterectomy that I needed, and it did damage. And so I have had my own struggles with this, very personal struggles with this. But you know what I never thought to do? Murder the CEO of the healthcare company. That is not something that ever crossed my mind. It is absolutely inappropriate. And quite frankly, if we see these claims online of people really calling for the deaths of others and family members and bomb threats and those kinds of things, those need to be reported to the FBI's online tip line. They absolutely need to be, because you're right. This is a very dangerous precedent. If change is made as a direct result of Mr. Thompson's death, this is going to give people more confidence that violence is the way that they can change the system. And this is not the way that you change a system which is arguably broken.
And it's not just about insurance. It could be politics. It could be media. That's what's really scary. And look, first of all, Tracy, thank you so much for sharing that story. I didn't know that.
It's okay.
And I'm sorry to hear that, but I think you make a really good point. And for those of who are listening to this and say, Jesse's standing on a soapbox right now. Let me tell you also why I'm bringing it up. The reason I'm also bringing it up in terms of the investigation is if you have this outpouring of support for the shooter, Tracy, won't it make it less likely for people to come forward with information on the shooter? If they want him, if they like hailing him as a hero and they think he did a great thing, who's going to provide tips about him? Isn't that going to be a complication for law enforcement?
100%. I think it's going to be a complication for law enforcement in terms of people coming forward. But I also think people might be more agreeable to hiding this individual, if that makes any sense. We look at people that are prosecuted for, crimes against children, rape, those kinds of things. People are more likely to turn them in because I think we all morally agree that those crimes are wrong. They're even treated differently in prison. But right now you have this real moral dilemma, right? This real pro-shooter outpouring that has really come out. And I think more people will be amenable to hiding this individual and far less people are going to report him. I don't know that they're going to do that to be maligned for $50,000. It's not like that's a small amount of money, but I'm not sure that people will feel that is right in their moral judgment.
By the way, talking about whether it's Idaho, Brian Kohberger, he hasn't been convicted. At the time of this recording, the trial hasn't happened yet. Even the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, Thomas Crooks, the deceased shooter, this one, it makes me wonder, even if there is an arrest, or if you said there should be a different set of circumstances, do you think we'll ever get the answers as to why this happened?
I would not be surprised. Again, I want to point out, I'm just hypothesizing, if this individual decided to engage in self-harm, that they leave some kind of a manifesto. This is someone who feels very strongly, right, about what they're doing. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if they leave reasons for why they're doing it. They're not trying to say they're sorry or anything like that, but they want the public to know what has happened to them personally. So we may get answers, but they might be answers through the lens of the suspect, which won't be completely clear.
Oh boy. All right, let's see where this goes. Tracy Walder, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your information with us. I really, really always appreciate your perspective. We're lucky to have you. So thanks so much, Tracy.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.